Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Among the Stars. This was sent to me by Stronghold Games and is designed by Vangelis Bagiartakis. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. In Among the Stars, each player takes on the role of an alien race trying to build a space station for the newly formed Intergalactic Alliance. They accomplish this goal by drafting location cards to be placed in their play area in the best possible way. The player with the most efficient space station after 4 years is the winner. Let me show you how to play. So in Among the Stars, there are two modes, aggressive and non-aggressive. I'll go over non-aggressive mode and then add on aggressive mode rules afterward. I would recommend aggressive mode, especially if you're an experienced player, but you can choose to play without those rules. Over here, you've got a scoreboard for all the players. You've got a deck, power reactors, objectives. These are actually optional. You don't have to use these. There are 8 of them, and you randomly pick as many as there are players. And there are also character races, which are also optional. For your first game, you don't even need to play with objectives and character races, but if you're an experienced board game player, I highly recommend them because I think they add a lot to the game. Here's an example of one, the VAC. Your main reactor counts as a location of every type. That'll make more sense later, but yeah, each player gets their own character. And to start off, each player gets a main reactor with 2 energy cubes to start on top of it. Now the game is played over a period of 4 years, each of them represented by a single round. At the beginning of every round, each player should take 10 credits and put them in their play area and draw 6 cards from the location deck, like so. These form your hand and are kept secret from the other players. Now each round, cards are drafted in a different order. So for the first year, you can see it's in a clockwise fashion, but in year 2, you'll flip it over to a counterclockwise. That way, each round is a little bit different from the others. And every turn, you're going to select a card from your hand and place it face down in front of you. After everyone's put down a card, they then pass their cards to the next player. In this case, it'd be clockwise. You'll then receive a new hand of cards, and then it's time to flip the card over. Then everyone simultaneously can choose one of these actions to perform. You can build a location, build a power reactor, or discard this card and gain 3 credits. Let's go over each one. If you want to build a location card, it has to be adjacent to a card that you already have in your space station. So at the beginning of the game, the only card you have is your main reactor. So it'd have to be orthogonally adjacent to this, not diagonal. In order to build a card, you have to pay the cost of credits. In this case, it'd be 2 credits, and then you can choose to place the card anywhere in your station as long as it is adjacent to another card. Now, some cards, like this turret card here, also cost energy cubes in addition to their credits. If you wanted to build this card, it would have to be within a card that has energy cubes on it, within 2 squares. In order to count the distance, you count orthogonally. So it would be 1, 2, that'd be valid. So I could build this here if I wanted, if I paid a credit and paid an energy cube. After you build a card, you gain the number of victory points that are on the card. So it'd be 2 for each of these. So you would move your little score tracker along here. This would be after 2 turns, obviously. You can only build 1 location per turn. And then if you look at the cards, yellow abilities are delayed abilities, and these are abilities you look at the end of the game. Security Station here is if you get plus 2 victory points if Security Station has 4 adjacent locations. So if you manage to build 2 more here, this will be worth 2 more points to you. If we look at the turret, for each other turret in the station, you get 1 victory point. So turrets are all, you benefit from getting more and more of those. If I built the customs card here, this is a white immediate ability. It's not only 3 victory points, but you get 1 extra victory point for each adjacent yellow location, or B location. So it wouldn't make sense to build this one yet because I don't have any yellow locations in my space station. But if I did and built it right then, I would immediately get points. I wouldn't get points again later. Now with regards to energy, there are 2 types of cards that come with energy. The main reactor comes with 2. And then you can also build power stations. If you look over here, they give you 2 victory points and 2 energy cubes when you build them. And they cost 1 credit each to build. So instead of building a location, let's say I discard this card on my turn, and I choose to build a power reactor for my action. I would pay 1 credit, and then I could place it anywhere in my space station, and it would come with 2 more energy cubes. I also would get 2 more victory points for building it. That way, if cards require energy, they can be within 2 spaces of this. If there are no more power reactors in the deck, you can no longer build them. And then your final action you can do is if you don't want to build a power reactor or a location, you can choose to just discard the card. If you discard the card, you will get 3 credits immediately if you need the currency. Now each turn you're constantly passing your hand over to the next player for each turn. So you're always going to be seeing different cards. And after 6 of those turns and there are no more cards left, the round ends. Before beginning the next round, it's recommended that each player takes a look at the other player's space stations to check for errors. If there is an error, then the player who built that rule-breaking space station must remove as many locations as needed in order to have a valid station. You also lose the victory points for the cards removed, and you don't get any credits back, so you gotta be careful. Otherwise, you do 4 rounds of that for in-game years, and the game is over. After that, you check and see if any objectives are met. So if we go over to these objectives here, these are optional, but I recommend you play with them. You will get points for doing these. Accelerated construction here, be the first to reach 50 victory points before the end of the 4th year. You will get 4 points for doing that. Grand attractions, if you build the most purple or pink locations, and I believe F stands for, or it's not F, it's an R. Yeah, it's an R. That's recreational ones. You would get 5 points if you were the most fun. Intergalactic trade objective, you build the most business or yellow locations. And then first line of defense, if you build the most, I believe these are military locations, you get 5 points at the end. Then you would look at your space station. Obviously, there'd be a lot more cards in this, and you would check all the yellow abilities and count up all the points for that. You would then gain 1 victory point for every power reactor that does not contain any cubes. If you used all the cubes from this, you would get an extra point. And then you would count up 1 victory point for every 3 credits you have remaining rounded down. If 2 or more players tie for an objective, then nobody gets it. Now, before I go into aggressive mode, let's go over the other character races. So we already went over the VAC, where your main reactor counts as a location of every type, which can be useful for those color bonus objectives. The Sisorians, during the game setup, place all the unused special locations in one pile. I forgot to mention that some of the locations are special. Let me find an example of one. Oh yes, the ones that are marked with an S here, you put in a certain number of them each game with the basic locations. But what the Sisorians can do is that once during each year, before selecting a card, you can draw 5 cards from the unused special locations that were set aside from the game, and then remove 5 special location cards in your hand from the game. So they have more selection. The Sheepius, when you discard a card to gain credits, you gain 4 credits instead of 3, which is nice. At the end of the game, you gain +1 victory point for every 2 remaining credits to a maximum of 5. So they're all about money. The Mini-Reen, once during each year, you may discard the card you selected from your hand and build another location from the discard pile. You pay its cost as normal. If you do, remove the rest of the cards in the discard pile from the game so he can build extra buildings. The Qualeen, at the beginning of the game, draw 2 extra objectives and choose one, keeping it hidden from the other players. At the end of the game, you may reveal it and add it to the rest. You may complete it and claim its reward even if you are tied for it with another player, so they have an extra secret objective. The Humarine, at the end of the game, gain victory points equal to the number of locations of the type you have the least +1, to a maximum of 5 points. The Zehudi, at the beginning of each year, you get 13 credits instead of 10, but you don't get new credits when you discard a card, and you can't keep credits from one year to the next. I forgot to mention, between years, you keep the credits you didn't spend. And finally, the Garn Arthaknok. Once during each year, before any cards are selected, you may look at another player's hand and exchange one of your cards with one of his, which is pretty handy. Now let's get into aggressive mode. In order to play the aggressive mode, you need a conflict set, like the dispute set here. And so how you play is the first round is the same as non-aggressive, but then for the second round, you're going to shuffle a number of these conflict cards into the location deck. And for each of the next 3 rounds, each player will draw an extra card from the deck for a total of 7 cards per player. If you select a conflict card, you cannot build it since it's not a location card, but instead you pay the cost and apply the effect. So if we look at this dispute card here, you can choose another player and count the number of R locations in each of your space stations. If you have more, gain victory points equal to the difference, and they lose the same amount, up to a maximum of 3. So this is a very aggressive card, especially if you have a lot of these pink R locations. Other than that, there are 2-player rules and other variants. I'm not going to go over all those. They're all in the rule book. This is usually the way you're going to be playing is 3 to 4 players. But yeah, you're very simple. You just build locations, try to stack up combos. Let me show you some of the other cards that are in the game. The docking bay, you get +1 victory point for each location between the docking bay and the main reactor. So if you put this far away from the main reactor, you can get some points, up to 4. It's pretty interesting. A lot of these give you delayed effects for like colors, like +1 for each yellow location in the station, up to 5. Or you have specific cards like the garden here. You get 3 points, +1 if there's no military location within 3 spaces, or +1 more if there's no power reactor within 2. So that's other interesting little rules like that. But yeah, all it is building locations and power reactors to charge up buildings, or discarding cards to pay credits for more. And that's the game. What I like about this game is it's extremely easy to learn. You have 3 things you can do: build a card, or build a station, or discard it and get credits. You can learn it in like 5 minutes, like less than 5 minutes. The turns are quick, you're just drafting cards. All right, pick a card, pass, pick a card, pass. And it's always engaging throughout. Drafting is always a really fun mechanic in my opinion. And so coupling that with a neat little kind of tile building game works really well. It's satisfying watching your space station expand, and then maximizing your victory point rewards according to the conditions of the cards to their fullest potential. The power stations make it so you can't just build willy-nilly. There's definitely a strategy and importance to building placement, and I like that you get rewarded for using up all the energy on the stations and being efficient. If you use up those 2 cubes, you get an extra point for each station. You never feel completely stuck with the game because you always can discard for more credits or buy more power stations. But at the same time, you're constantly going to wish in a good way you had, just give me a little more credits to get that one great card, or, I got to get this card, or at least throw it away or something so that someone else can't build it. There's always that sort of thought in your mind as you look at other people's space stations. With that said, even though the game is very solid overall, sometimes it's a little bland. Objectives make each game a little different, but what I think really helps is using the alien powers, which makes things interesting. And aggressive mode, I think, is a plus for this one. It adds a level of player interaction I think the game really needs, because otherwise it's very much kind of like, I'm just sort of making my little power station, you're making yours, and you're making yours. Aggressive mode adds a little bit of extra conflict I like, but you don't have to play with it if that's not your style, which I also like. The alien powers aren't as essential, but they do make you feel unique and powerful with the perks that they give you. They're very nice perks. This is one of those games where I feel like the expansions will really beef it up, because where it stands, the choices are pretty simple. I mean, don't get me wrong, the game itself is quite good, but I feel like the potential is barely tapped with this. Maybe more interesting cards, or maybe a little more theme of feeling like you're in space stations would solidify this game as a great game, but for me it's a good game, which is still worth playing. These are just minor personal complaints though, because I think the game is quite good and it's definitely worth playing. I would say check it out if you're interested, especially if you want something on the lighter end. I love the spatial feel of the strategy of building the station, and I love how fast it plays. Again, it's refreshing to just be able to take out a game and learn it almost instantly. I'm curious to see if the expansions elevate it to what I think this could be, but as it is, it's still definitely worth playing. It's light, it's fast, and it offers just enough strategy to be engaging throughout. And I like that it has those optional aggressive modes or alien powers or objectives you can add. I recommend all 3 if you are an experienced player, because it makes the game that much more robust, but I appreciate the level of flexibility that the game offers, especially for new players. So overall, recommend it. It's good. It's good shit.